guys. Listen to some blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
And here we are, the stream we've probably been waiting for since 2017-ish. Kathleen Kennedy is gone. She has stepped away from Lucasfilm, and we are going to talk about it. This will probably be around a 1-hour discussion. There's some tight scheduling issues for everyone involved, but we want this to be a meaty, substantive discussion about where we have been left and what will come in the future here. So joining me is fellow YouTuber Retro Nerd Girl.
Hello.
And then just entering the studio, he slipped in through the back of the studio, we have Hollywood screenwriter Kamran Pasha.
Hey everyone, it's great to see everyone. Are we live? Just want to make sure we're live right now, huh?
We are live as of now. So
I'm going to let everyone in my Patreon community know about that in a second, but I'm so delighted to be on.
Yes, and we're happy to have you, Retro, you as well. So obviously this has been a hot topic for a long time. An astoundingly enduring topic. People have talked about Kathleen Kennedy ad infinitum, and there's a wide spectrum of takes out there, from overtly pessimistic and negative to corporate shill style optimisms, full on support, and then there's a lot of us somewhere in the middle. And I think most of us are in the middle, and I would say that most of us probably have looked at the Kennedy era as an era of failure and disappointment for the most part. That said, there were some successes in there. It started strong. We covered this at length with our long series of the Kennedy era of Lucasfilm, which we did it last year based on the assumption that she was out. Now, she said even at that time that she was stepping, it looked like she was going to step down in October of 2025. And it looks like, by all accounts, she stayed on for an extra 3 months just to kind of stick it to us and delay the inevitable. But here it is, January 2026. Kennedy is gone. She is being replaced by Dave Filoni, which I believe is taking over the creative side of Lucasfilm. And I always forget her name. Brennan, Lynwyn Brennan is who's going to be taking over the business side. So it's going to be kind of a two-headed eagle there, a double eagle in Lucasfilm. And I have to say, I haven't heard a lot of overt optimism. I've heard the negativity, but I haven't heard a lot of optimism. And there seems to be there is some apathy, I would say, at this point in the announcement at this stage. Just full disclaimer, I was a huge Dave Filoni fan early on for the Clone War, what he did with the Clone Wars series. I know it wasn't for everybody, but the Clone Wars was a resounding success as far as I'm concerned. It really captured some of the magic of Star Wars and brought on some new characters. And so if you would have asked me 10 years ago how I feel about Dave Filoni taking over Lucasfilm, I would have been ecstatic. Today, I'm much more guarded, willing to be optimistic and ready to see what he can do. But I just wanted to put that out there. I was a big Filoni fan. Retro, let's start with you. Do you know anything? Tell us about we have, I got to keep checking for her name. Lin-Win Brennan. Do you know anything about her and Dave Filoni? If so, what are your thoughts about this takeover?
Linwell is her name?
Lin-Wen.
Not familiar with her at all. I am though familiar with Filoni, Dave Filoni, and I was impressed with what he was able to do with the animation sector and how that kind of rose throughout the ranks of fandom and how people just absolutely love those stories. Not so impressed with his series Ahsoka. It was okay. There were a few moments where I gave me some uneasy storytelling vibes. I just felt like things didn't quite work out for me, but it wasn't horrible. It wasn't horrible. So it was decent. So I do feel like there's something there to actually be like, okay, this looks like he's at least very entrenched into the storytelling. I don't know what his objectives will be moving forward. I mean, that's to be seen, whether he is going to be about creating new characters and moving forward, or continuing to do work with the characters he is going to be working with. Like, what is his strategy going forward? That we'll have to find out. And I feel like this is sort of the Warner Brothers, like, kind of thing, like what they did with their DC projects, where they had two people spearheading their the head of their departments. It feels like they were doing that with Lucasfilm as well. So it doesn't sound like a bad idea. One person to handle the creative ideas and another person to handle the business, but I don't know exactly if that will truly blend out. We'll have to see, because a lot of us are still squeamish about what's based on the record of the past. We're still untrusting, so we need some proof that things are going to be going the right direction.
Right. That's right. And so, and me and Retro are, I would say, a part of the general fandom, which distinguishes us from Kamran. Kamran Pasha here is he's a Hollywood insider with extensive experience within the industry. If you've heard his commentary before, and I'm assuming many of you have, you know that he relies on experience and in his own intuitive sense on where things are going, what things mean based on how things have played out in the past. In a very complex industry, let's be honest. It is Hollywood is very Byzantine, but it does follow similar patterns we've seen elsewhere, where there's power games at stake and a lot of personal rivalries in a highly competitive industry. So, Kamran, what are your thoughts about the replacements with Filoni and Brennan?
Well, again, I'm going to come at it from a different perspective than some of the people watching and some of the people commenting. Just because I've been inside the kitchen for so long, so I see how the hamburger gets made, and as often happens, if you work inside McDonald's, you no longer want to eat at McDonald's because you now know what's happening behind in the kitchen. So my perspective is often sort of addled with that reality. But let me actually add that perspective. So I have contacts inside of Lucasfilm Disney that have been telling me for a long time about this planned exit and the dramas behind scenes regarding it. And this is, there's been more drama at that studio than the drama it's actually physically created on screen, right? And so it's really a very, very, like you said, Byzantine, but to the point of a comedy that became tragedy that became comedy again. It's just it's a little silly, but we are at this documentary. Yeah. We are at this place. I think that there is, the perception you described that there's maybe some disappointment or some just neutral feelings now, I think that's truer amongst hardcore Star Wars fans and people very heavily invested in the day-to-day drama of this nonsense for the last several years. I don't know that that's true of general people. I think we have, and it's sometimes difficult to differentiate if you are such a passionate fan that the general public, like my brother-in-law, who just watches the shows and the movies and doesn't really know or care about the drama and is often confronting me, hey, didn't you say this and that? I don't think that's what's happening, right? I mean, he doesn't know what's going on, right? But he represents the general public, and so I think to them this is just okay, whatever. Let's just keep getting more Star Wars, right? I don't think the general public was largely aware of these dramas. I do think the general public was very dissatisfied, on The Last Jedi very specifically. I think there was a deep wound to the general fandom from that because it was so far from what people understood Star Wars to be, and that I think that startled and disappointed the general public, right? But then people got along board with some of the things that when Jon Favreau came in with his vision, with things, they got on board with the Mandalorian and the universe that was created from that for the most part, and I think they were more forgiving of story flaws and problems that people saw in shows like Obi-Wan and others, right? I think the general public generally liked them more than the fandom, but we lost a lot of viewership and we felt the steam coming out. But I think that we already had signs the storytelling was going to come back, even if you didn't like Obi-Wan, and I liked Obi-Wan, but others didn't. But I think that if anyone bothered to watch the Skeleton Crew, which was the show about the children. Yeah, if people bothered to watch it, most people really liked it and felt I wish this had been Star Wars of Kennedy from the beginning, right? And that was by the time she had blown all of her currency on the Acolyte, so she didn't have any energy left to spend on derailing that one. And that was for me the beginning of a hopeful future. And then after that came these announcements of these Mandalorian movie and the Thrawn trilogy and all that's being developed, and now we've got this Starfighter. I think the general public is anticipating those things, and I think if they're successful, if I think Mando and Grogu and Starfighter are successful, which I expect they will be, then I think the general public will have moved on from this drama. I think that within the fandom, there's the general malaise I talked about, the feelings of disappointment and betrayal. And then there's a lot of people that agitated those feelings who were economically invested in narratives once they discovered that YouTube could make them some money, right? And suddenly they could, their story became whatever they thought they could get clicks on. And they quickly discovered human beings, the P.T. Barnum philosophy of there's a sucker born every minute, so I can say whatever I want and people will I can make up nonsense and that people will just line up and pay me to do that, right? And so I think those people are actually quite saddened to see Miss Kennedy go, because I think that we're going to be entering into a low, not necessarily no drama. There's never no drama in Hollywood. We're going to enter into a low drama period, I think, now under this new official regime. I think the regime was the people announced today were essentially running things for the last couple of years quietly, and now we're going to enter a low drama period, which isn't good for those who are invested in P.T. Barnum stuff. So they'll move on to other things. But I am very much a voice of hope for the future. And the one thing I'll say that the official narrative, again Hollywood has a PR narrative, and then there's the truths behind the scenes, and they rarely align. They almost never align, right? But as you know from your studies of the Byzantine Empire, that their emperors must create a public opinion, which rarely coincides with the actual politics of the empire, right? Because if it did, then there would be revolution, and so general public can't know what's going on inside the halls of power. But what I know, from my contacts inside Lucasfilm, I've known it for several years now, that even this power structure that's publicly described with Dave Filoni being sort of the creative head and Ms. Brennan being the business head is still not the actual power structure. Those are the two co-regents officially, but this is an old medieval situation where the real Shadow King appoints the two co-regents as, their functionary. And so the real Shadow King in this situation remains Jon Favreau, and he wisely has no official title, he's not the official Shadow King CEO, right? He's just a guy. He's just a guy who makes movies, who hangs out at Lucasfilm sometimes, and that's his non-defined role, which is exactly the role that you would have if you are the power behind the throne, right? You don't want to be, because when times for revolution comes, it's the person on the throne that's beheaded, right? Not the person who's hanging out in the shadows and whispering in their ear.
Well, and also, people were jockeying for that position. So someone like Dave Filoni, who's been described multiple times as the company guy, so if Favreau is smart, you let the company guy get the promotion and let him hang himself.
When necessary, I think Favreau. I think Favreau likes Filoni. I mean, again, people are friends to the extent that it doesn't damage their lives in Hollywood. Once it damages them, then the friendship kind of ends, right? Ends very quickly. But I think they're friendly. I think that they're aligned. I do think Dave Filoni wants to make fun Star Wars. I think he really does. I don't think Miss Kennedy ever wanted to. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I have to. When I think of Dave Filoni, and I said 10 years ago, I would have been, ecstatic to hear that he was in charge of Lucasfilm. So my read on him is a little bit different, or maybe it's not. I don't know. But he did a good job when he was mentoring under George Lucas. He kind of adopted and absorbed Lucas's vision for the Clone Wars, and they did some pretty special stuff with the Clone Wars. Anyone who really takes their time to watch, not every episode, there are some really bad episodes in there as well, or episodes made for 6-year-olds, but there are some gold standard episodes in there, some of the best Star Wars, in my opinion, that there is. They're really good stuff. So I felt like when George was setting the tone, Dave Filoni met him at that place. And I felt that when Kathleen Kennedy took over and she set the tone, Dave Filoni met her at that place.
Why? Because he's a very smart man. He is a survivor. I met this man at the beginning. I was interviewed to be the head writer of this show called The Clone Wars they were developing in 2010. I didn't get the job. I ended up being the head writer of the Tron animated series. I went from one animated possibility to another. So I met him then, before The Clone Wars had been as launched as an animated series. And even then, in that only meeting that I ever had with that final interview, I went through an interview process, got to him. When I final interview, I didn't get the job after that interview. So obviously I didn't nail that interview, but I pretty much got his number, which this is a survivor and a corporate player. I know that person, and I don't pull that as a negative thing, because here we are 16 years later. He is the nominal head of Lucasfilm. That's what you do when you play the game. I mean, I remember how much attack all the people in the fandom that were attacking him for this and that. I don't like the show, but I don't like that you went and spoke at this feminist conference and said how Rey is the feminist future of Star. Yeah, guess what? He's doing what his boss is telling him. Kathleen Kennedy's like, could you speak at my feminist conference thing about how wonderful Rey is? He's like, yes, boss, I'll do that, because he doesn't care what you think.
Yeah, he's not there to speak on the fandom's behalf.
Yeah, that's why he is now the nominal head of a studio, because he didn't fall into let's make the angry fans whose moods change every day happy this week, because he knows that doesn't mean nothing. What means something is surviving a Byzantine political system, which he did.
So that said, that frame, if Filoni is good at kind of meeting the real power behind the throne where they're at, and that, let's say, is now Favreau, what don't you think that suggests that we might get a more resurgent Filoni now that he has a boss that would want that from him, something more creative and less divisive?
Well, I mean, I think he always, like I said, he just wants to make good stuff in a corporate environment, which, God bless him, most people don't even want to do that. When I worked at Disney, nobody was trying to make good stuff. Nobody was trying to, that wasn't the goal. The goal was survival.
Right.
Good stuff was made accidentally, as a byproduct.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody's intent. My intent was to make good stuff, and I got fired in 6 months, because that's not the goal in the corporate studio system, right? And so, but I think he still has had the desire to make good Star Wars, and I think that he's happier under this shadow Favreau situation, where Favreau just says, "This is what I think we should be doing. Dave, you want to go do that? You take credit for it, yeah." And because on a practical level, people who deny that that's what's happening, Dave Filoni he can't call the board of directors of Disney. He don't have that kind of power, right? Whereas Jon Favreau can call every one of those people on a speed dial, right? And they'll take that call, right? So that's the person who's setting the nature of the studio. And I think Filoni's happy to do it. and he will again bow to the power. That's why you're hearing nothing more about this supposed Dave Filoni movie. Have you heard anything about it in a year or more?
No, I haven't.
No. You hear about it, fandom YouTubers talking about it's coming because he ain't going to get that movie. Not at least for a long time, because he's never.
I haven't heard about that in about a year.
He hasn't made a real, live action movie. He's made one animated movie that was poorly reviewed and wasn't liked by the fans. So he knows he don't gonna step outside of what he can do. Maybe if he can pull off a few good movies with his name on as executive producer, maybe in like the 2030s they'll give him a movie, right? but that's the game he's playing. That's the long-term game he's playing, and God bless him, he made it work.
Well, of note, that I just found this to be interesting. I pay for a AI service it helps me do a ton of research and everything for my writing. By the way, and I don't think it needs to be said, but I do not use AI to help me write. I write on my own, but I will use it as a tool for fun, either for real hardcore research or for something fun like this. I programmed I had it analyze the professional, basically the CV of Dave Filoni, of whatever, and I had them score everybody. And I said, based on the professional profiles, political outlooks, I included in the analysis, demonstrated success, etc. What is the probability that the Filoni-Brennan team does better, worse, or about the same as Kathleen Kennedy? And man, this thing was cooking for like 3 minutes, and it kicked out this huge report. And it summed it up at the end. I know it's hysterical. It summed it up at the end that the most likely scenario is they do about the same based on all those variables I programmed. What's interesting is that the lowest outcome is that they would do better than Kennedy. I found that to be surprising.
Was this ChatGPT?
No. This is Perplexity AI.
Perplexity is really good.
Yeah, Perplexity is pretty good. I've gotten some great study stuff. Now,
Yeah.
Of course, there's a lot of variables I just couldn't account for.
The variable is you didn't put in. John Favreau is actually the one running.
That is correct.
If you put that, I would love for you to rerun that with what if these two are figureheads and John Favreau is the actual decision maker behind the scenes. It will give you a different figure. I promise.
Go ahead and talk this over. I will rerun it right now and add that in there.
Yeah. So, Director Nordica, let's go with these numbers. What are your perceptions just of these numbers?
That sounds just like my feelings. They reflect my feelings exactly. Probably the average sort of kind of nerd that likes Star Wars probably feels the same way. That this is pretty much like a 50-50 chance it's probably going to run the same way. But there's an extraordinarily small chance. 25 it's not extraordinarily small, but it's still a very small chance that we could get extraordinary storytelling, and that's worth it. Well, I'll take those odds because that's what we've always wanted for the franchise is great storytelling. We want to have those feelings again we had when we first saw Star Wars, whatever form it was. We want to still feel like that again. And right now it's very complicated. Everything is filled with a lot of, okay, if that happens, then that negates this story. And that doesn't work out because this is not doesn't go canonically together in what we know about Star Wars. And that is the biggest issue that we have is just that piece, that storytelling piece. And if they can get it 25% correct, I mean, it would be just amazing.
Yeah. And just again, going off these figures, which I don't actually share, but these figures are in front of me. I think 25% is 25% more than what was possible when Kathleen Kennedy was actually in charge, right? I mean, there was a 0% chance of her ever learning and improving. There was no chance that she would ever get feedback from the fans. She had no interest in it, and no chance that she would get feedback from the ratings or the economics. She had no interest in that either, right? Yeah. She literally had no interest in any feedback that pushed her off of her stubborn, this is what I'm going to do with Star Wars.
Well,
it's why she ain't in charge anymore.
Well, and to be honest, and I say we take a second to talk about her, and then I don't want to talk about her anymore. I'll be happy to not talk about her anymore. my take on her was, here was someone who worked in a secondary role, but and by the way, her legacy. This woman had a legacy of invincibility in 2012. She was untouchable. She was Hollywood royalty, and she was given the keys to the kingdom. I think now that this is all said and done, her legacy is severely tarnished by this.
It's gone, yeah.
I mean, severely tarnished. And so I think in a weird way, this was a perfect storm. You had someone who didn't belong as a studio head, who was also Hollywood invincibility, put into a position where she essentially could not get fired, and had the exact opposite vision that a normal company would have for what a successful run at the franchise was. And so so she went from, I could do it better than George. See, I proved it with Force Awakens, to now I'm going to do my vision as someone who's better than George, to no one likes that. Screw the fans. I'm scorched earth policy. I mean, that's a perfect storm. You almost couldn't create another scenario where someone was unfireable at Lucasfilm except her. And she was unfireable, but now she's gone. And so I think that now that I've heard you analyze J.J. Abrams, Cameron, about how he had a certain, he wasn't untouchable the way Kennedy was, but he was,
and he fell publicly well before her.
Right. So he was an established big name there for a while, but you got to the point where your associate, as he fell and fell fast, your association to him became a liability. And so all of his surrounding circle and minions and acolytes, they were also tarnished and kind of disappeared with him.
Yeah.
I think that we have yet to see that phase play out, that all the people that were part of the Kennedy regime who eagerly and enthusiastically carried out her wishes, I don't think they're going to be well received in the industry. So I think there will be a sort of liability factor to her strong supporters as the reality of her departure kind of settles into the system. I mean, does that sound accurate to you, Cameron, based on your understanding?
Well, I know that that Ms. Kennedy is now disliked by the system. That was proven when the trades turned against her last year, because trades had covered for her. And the understanding that we have with the trades is you never attack the trades, you never deny the trades, right? Because the trades are the lifeblood of the industry's PR system. And if the trades are against you, you need to kiss their ass so that they're with you later, right? That's what you do. You never make the trades your enemy, right? Because they will survive. The Variety, Hollywood Reporter, and Deadline are going to be around after Bob Iger. They will survive whoever leaves and comes, right? That because they're the voice of the blood flow of the system, right? So last year, when initially Puck announced that she was leaving, right? And then that was then supported by Variety and Hollywood Reporter. Both did follow-up articles from Matt Bellany's Puck article, supporting that, talking to people inside of Lucasfilm, talking to industry people about her post-Lucasfilm plans and all that. And then she came out and she publicly essentially called the trades liars. And she did an interview with Deadline where she did this long, rambling interview where she denied but didn't deny that she was leaving. She denied she was leaving and I said, well, I'm going to leave soon. I mean, it was literally it was this ridiculous thing where the whole was rambling thing where she's pretending to deny. And she says, well, we're kind of making plans for my succession. All right. So that infuriated the trades because she called them a liar. That's why you notice her exit interview right now was only with Deadline. She didn't give it
only
to
Deadline.
She didn't give it to, she didn't give it to Variety, right? Because they turned against her. So even if people in my industry are unaware of the internal politics, and many of them are unaware. If you're successful in the industry, you don't have to be aware of all of the things. You just have to be aware of whether someone is toxic at the moment or not. It's an intuition. There's a lot of feminine intuition going on in this town, right? And so people kind of sense that something's wrong with Kennedy, and they started backing away. The system started backing away when she did her rambling thing with the trades, right?
It was awful.
But now everyone who doesn't know or care about the drama that I've sadly been more than aware of, right, because of my contacts, right, is sensing something's wrong. So when you sense someone has lost their throne and the trades are turning against them, you, for your own survival, make them persona non grata. So you don't know why. You don't know why it's happening, and you don't care. All you know is I got to survive. So anyone now associated with her, who's still associated with her, people like, people of the caliber of Pablo Hidalgo, the last,
yeah,
the last remnants of her story, friends, right? I don't think they have anywhere to go once their time at Lucasfilm ends, because
that's what
they
I
are
think.
associated. Whereas Brennan was very smart. Brennan, unlike Carrie, her sort of rival inside this is Carrie Beck, her rival inside the system. Carrie Beck didn't get the press. She could have been up. She was essentially Kennedy's right-hand person. She didn't get the job because Brennan quickly decided, I'm going to keep my head low like Filoni, and I'm going to focus on running. Essentially, she was running the business side of things because Kennedy was off the picture. So she's off running their Lucasfilm Sound, ILM, the special effects company, and she did a good job of that, of making them money doing that and keeping her head low and immediately quietly, accepting the power structure that existed with John Favreau in the background. So when it came time to, it's like, okay, well, notice Carrie Beck she didn't have a shot at it because she was too publicly associated with Kennedy. Whereas Brennan, who, Retro Nerd Girl doesn't know who she is, right? And most people don't know who she is. That's good. Who she is. That's how you survive in a Byzantine imperial palace. People should know who you are.
And also, I think that is another thing that I would also like to say about Kennedy, that's it's a key element, is that once she took on or became the head of Lucasfilm, she became a celebrity.
Yeah.
And that famous picture of her with the Star Wars jacket opening. She thought she did it. I mean,
and that just made her a bullseye. But then a lot of the comments that she would make in her interviews were specifically against fans. Sure. And even if you're like, oh, fans don't know what they want or whatever, as soon as she did that, they zeroed in on her. And that was pretty much like food for the sharks. It was like, there's blood in the water, And so that was another thing with her, is that she became a celebrity. She wasn't just an executive that you didn't know working behind the scenes. She became a target. Which is
a big mistake. You hit. Most people have never heard of, any of the top executives at Disney. The average person doesn't know who they are, or any of the top people. When you hear about the CEO of Warner Brothers, you're like, who the hell is that, right? You making yourself a public thing like that is a violation of one of the 48 rules of power, right? I mean, you just don't bring that spotlight onto yourself, right? You don't. And the pivotal thing is, the first rule of power, as you know, Douglas Burton, first rule of power in the 48 laws of power is never outshine the boss, right? And
definitely not.
And the boss in this situation, was George Lucas's legacy, right?
Yeah.
That's the boss. The idea is somebody, Filoni, always kissed Lucas's butt, even while he was kissing Kathleen Kennedy, right? Publicly, always Lucas, where she went out of her way to say, I'm here to bring us to a new era past George's old-timey stuff, right? She's saying this garbage, which is putting the spotlight on her and outshining the boss in the eyes of the public, right?
Yes.
You don't take over DreamWorks and say, I'm going to improve on Steven Spielberg's mediocre, track record here at DreamWorks. You don't do that.
Yeah.
You just don't do it, because you may in fact be correctly making better stuff than Steven Spielberg, but you humbly let him take the shine.
100%.
Yeah.
I always imagine it like someone, Coke, the secret ingredients to Coca-Cola. I mean, that's one of the famous intellectual properties of corporate America for the last 100 years. The secret recipe to Coca-Cola, right? That's like me taking over Coca-Cola and being like, here's that secret recipe. I will invent a new one, and it'll be better than this one that had a 100-year track record that people couldn't, that globalized itself around the world.
So she knew coked herself. She knew coked herself.
She did. Yeah, she totally knew coked herself.
Coke.
More like Pepsi Clear. Remember Pepsi Clear?
Yeah.
No, but I remember New Coke because it was it's probably we even studied it in business school. It is one of the greatest disasters in rebranding in
this
human history.
This has replaced it. Yeah. This will be studied as what you do not do. Because I've read books on branding. And there are rules. And I remember, 10 years ago being like, man, this chick is betraying every branding rule I've ever read about. almost as if the industry decided that none of the rules don't matter anymore. We're going to throw the rule book out. We're going to do this new thing, and it's right because we say so. I mean, that just seemed to be.
I just want to say this, and I have to step away for 1 minute because I would grab my tea that's been brewing for 10 minutes. So, but I want to say this because it's directly related to what you just said. So 2 weeks, if you remember, Last Jedi came out like December 9th of 2017. Like the date is burned in my brain, right? Because I went to see it premiere night. I couldn't believe I was watching this. I just couldn't believe what was happening, right? I couldn't sleep that night. I was so like scarred by it. I couldn't sleep that night. I was like, what the hell's happening? And then 2 weeks after that, still in December of 2017, I was invited to go back to talk, Dartmouth's business school where I'm an MBA graduate. I was invited to come speak there at the communications. My old communication professor, Professor Argenti, asked me to come speak in the class about Hollywood PR and communications. This is 2 weeks later. So I came in, I completely created an ad lib speech for the class about if you want to study a business study of what's going to happen, watch what's going to happen at Lucasfilm. I said this in 2017, 2 weeks after The Last Jedi. I said, this is going to become this. There will be business school cases written about how someone destroyed a brand, the greatest entertainment brand of the 20th and early 21st century. How could one person do it by fundamentally misunderstanding the customer base? I gave that talk to MBA students 2 weeks after The Last Jedi.
Wow.
Right? And here we are now, almost 9 years later, right?
Well, and honestly, Kamran, if all things were normal, the wheels would have came off in 2018. She would have been fired, and you would have been vindicated immediately.
She should have been fired after Solo. That's what a normal executive would be fired.
And so we all would have been right. Well, I mean, specifically what you're talking about would have been proven. Would have already started that course of, oh my God, how do we destroy? But all things were not equal, and she found a way to kind of game the system to keep this thing going despite all the failures. I mean, Indiana Jones is one of the biggest profit losses of all time.
She destroyed Solo, right?
Yeah.
Which was the only Star Wars movie ever to make a loss in history. She destroyed, to be fair, people are kind of hurt Indiana Jones with that Alien movie, but then she really put the nail in the coffin with this next one, right? I'm like, this is what are you doing? What are you doing?
And Willow was so bad that they erased it from existence.
It's gone. Yeah.
Real quick, go grab your tea.
I want to see your revised stats.
I have. It's amazing. So go grab your tea, and then we'll jump on it. So retro. Obviously, So just real quick, I'll preface this. So I did the AI thing, and you have to work with the AI to kind of to orient it a little bit. So I had it do a study of, because I had it do a professional profile. How successful is this individual in Hollywood? And of course, when you examine KK, her whole history, there's a lot of success there. And what is amazing to me is, after it performed the original analysis, if it includes everything before 2012, her success rate is higher, obviously, this professional scoring that I had it create. And then when I had it remove it, it dropped. So meaning her view of herself as success, as a successful professional, went down from 2012 to currently, as you would expect. What amazed me is that it only went down a little bit. What that means is that her current spate of professional work was so bad that her almost invincible past didn't prop her up as much as I thought it would. It's kind of amazing. Yeah. And by the way, even if you include 2012, it still has to take into account the overwhelming commercial success of The Force Awakens. So that is boosting her score in my opinion, almost unfairly, given that when you look back at 2014 and The Force Awakens, you can really say that was an accident, given what we know comes next. That they really didn't. They spiked the touchdown, they got the money, and then they promptly threw that all out the window.
And I'll tell you why that one movie really was as successful as it was, and it was just because they copied. And I wouldn't, if they continued to copy, maybe they would have something, but they stopped copying and they were like, oh, well, now let's go and do our own thing.
George Lucas,
that wasn't it. They didn't have a plan for their new thing, really.
Which is insane, by the way. But George Lucas gave her a Willy Wonka golden ticket. When he wrapped that golden ticket into the franchise and handed it over, what that golden ticket was pent up goodwill overwhelming goodwill by the fandom, meaning whatever this next movie was going to be was going to make $2 billion, just about. And I think that Abrams got lucky that he did his mystery box, which made it seem like there was going to be that this was, we know that we left these open ends because we know where it's going. And secondly, he also played it ultra safe. Like you just said, it was kind of a retread of A New Hope. So I think they got really lucky with that, with the legs on that thing. But in retrospect, I tried to watch Force Awakens. It's really unwatchable because you're like, oh, that means no. Oh, that's a fake plot line.
Nothing's going to go anywhere. Well, Force Awakens was the first of a Star Wars movie that I had only watched once in the theater, right? I watched it, and it was like eating too much candy. I enjoyed it at the moment, and I felt like, I don't know, maybe I ate a little too much, right? It wasn't like The Last Jedi where I felt like I'd been shot in the stomach, right? I mean, that was a different reaction, right? This was awful. Okay, it was fun, but I don't feel any desire to go watch it tomorrow again, right? For a reason, because it was hollow, because I sensed intuitively that this was a retread, and
everybody did.
Yeah. And so I didn't feel the desire because I was, well, story's nothing new here. But I was very hopeful because I actually loved Looper. I still love Looper. I think it's a great movie.
A lot of people like Looper, yeah.
And so I was really excited that Rian Johnson was coming into this. And then I just like I said, it felt like, it felt like Kylo Ren stabbing me with his lightsaber on the bridge and letting me fall into the ice, whatever. So whatever. So that's what it was. But actually I want to, and then we can maybe move over to the chart you've been working on, because I want to go back for a second because you just said something on NBA perception. So right in 2012, when the studio announced, when Disney announced, or when we had we had that moment where George Lucas looked like he had a gun to his head when he's signing away Star Wars. Right? It wasn't like congratulations. It was literally like,
yeah. He's like,
Bob Iger's beaming.
Here you go.
He's like, I hate you all. I'm signing this because you have videotapes of me or something. Who knows?
Right? He was not happy.
But it was some business magazine. I don't know if it was Forbes or Institutional Investor or something like that, but some business magazine put out an article at the time that I read that was analyzing, because with the announcement came, we're going to be making a new Star Wars trilogy, episode, whatever, 7, whatever the hell we are, 7, 8, 9, right? And then J.J. Abrams is going to direct the first one, right? And this was, again, J.J. Abrams' height of his success at the time, right? And so this business reporter did an analysis of expectations for the success of this upcoming trilogy. This is before Force Awakens has been released, right? It's just been announced. And they said these are what we expect as the pattern. First movie that J.J. Abrams will do, we expect $2 billion box office, right? We expect it to be that, right? And then building on that, we expect the second movie to be 2.5 billion and the third movie to be over 3 billion, right? And that's what we expect, just doing our business.
It could have been, and it could have been.
And that's when I knew and that's what it should have been, because we saw that Avengers did get to 3 billion. It wasn't impossible. It got better. Yeah, that's because that's what you expect. That's what you expect, right? And so no one could expect that this would be mismanaged like this, right? Where you had no plan and no skill, and you brought in some dude who's like, here's a first draft that throws everything out. Yeah, let's go with that. That's not rational business. That's not, right? And no one can predict that. But the reaction was immediate when we saw The Last Jedi. For all of its immediate defenders, the system immediately defended it, right? Because again, the system was like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy's the voice of the current woke feminist thing. I got to support her, right? So everyone just piled on top, right? And the toxic fandom, right? And then, but the numbers spoke for themselves. Instead of 2.5 billion, it was 50%. It was 1.2 billion. That's not what's supposed to have happened. And then the third movie is 1 billion, just barely, right? Barely. Right? So it's 1/3 of what the projected outcome was in 2012. And that's, by the way, actual projected outcome.
Rogue One did about the same as The Rise of Skywalker, the spinoff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is incredible. So, I mean, that should be taken into account. And Cameron, I'm glad you actually mentioned it, but I've heard people make the argument like, well, obviously it's not going to keep making more money. Obviously it's going to go down. I'm like, wrong. Because like you said, the Avengers films, you could say, well, those are bolstered by the previous films. Sure. But it's still a metric.
Star Wars.
All 4 of these films were. So all of them went, and Endgame is one of the highest grossing films of all time, by the way. So you can continue to build that up. So anyway, so real quick, I did that initial analysis. So what I did was I had the AI break down what I call a professional profile. Analyze this person as a professional in Hollywood and rank their success rates based on their projects. How successful are they as a professional? I did tell it to include a political analysis and a social media active analysis, meaning whether you're right or left. If you're posting political opinions a lot on social media, it actually tends to harm you. Like if you're a big Trump supporter and you're like, hey, blah, blah, you could actually damage the film that way as well. So it just matters. Are you doing something that could damage the film? Take all of this into account. And it said that it was going to be about the same, 45% chance. So I reprogrammed it to say include a Jon Favreau professional success analysis. Treat him as a member of this leadership team with Filoni and Brennan, and recalibrate this entire analysis. It took almost 4 minutes for this to do it.
Okay.
It says with Favreau, it will be better. So it says Kennedy was a marginal, by the way, so it says Kennedy was a marginal success, and that's based almost exclusively on the overwhelming success at the time of Force Awakens. So if you take away Force Awakens, or if you adjust it for what it was, I guarantee that would say failure at this point. Anyway, so it said that that Filoni and Brennan -7 points actually might be worse than Kennedy.
Yeah. And again, you don't need an AI, and I intuitively understand that if it's just them, Filoni is not an A-list feature filmmaker. He's made some, up and down TV shows people don't like, right? That he ain't alone. He's not George Lucas. He's not anywhere near that, right? And Brennan, nobody knows who she is, right? She isn't, Kathleen Kennedy, who's this mover and shaker that knows how to get people to talk to the CIA and get stuff done. Right? She knows that, right? Who are these two? The system knows these two aren't in charge. Who are they?
Right. Well, and people need to remember Favreau, the wide range of him. So we all remember him as Mikey on Swingers. That's where he kind of popped on everybody's radar. But Favreau did the first live action adaptation, which became Disney's playbook for the next 15 years with The Jungle Book. That was Favreau. Favreau was the director of Iron Man, which kicked off the MCU. Favreau was there for No Way Home, which was the blowout film post-COVID that everyone said would never happen. And then, we were watching in the holidays, Elf. Jon Favreau did Elf, which is now a holiday class. Jon Favreau has a massive track record. If he could get a hold of if he can, grab those reins, I think he would. I think that +6, if I took away Brennan and Filoni, I think that would actually jump up to about a +20 based on his track.
If you have time to run an analysis again, because my instinct is this guy's the one telling both of them what to do, right?
So do you want me to
run it again with just Filoni as the actual practical head of Lucasfilm, where everyone defers to his opinions regardless of title.
With just Filoni?
Just Filoni. I bet you it's going to be in the 80%.
Wait, you mean just Favreau?
I'm sorry. Pardon me. Just Favreau. I misspoke. Thank you. Favreau. Just Favreau. And if you remove Filoni and Brennan, if he's the only, because my understanding is these two, again, they are the co-regents. I was just watching Vikings, which I've never watched Vikings before. I just fell in love with the show, right? I always watch shows long after they're off the air. So I'm watching Vikings now and I'm just in love with it. And there's this whole arc in the second season where this English king has appointed these two co-regents of a neighboring kingdom to rule. And the whole point is they're not in charge. They're answering to this dude who appointed them, right? Even though they're the king and queen together, right? Nobody thinks they're in charge.
Wow.
So
we have to remember Filoni started as just an animator. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's what he was.
Right. So, and not that means that you don't have Iger started at an entry level position, but Filoni started as an animator and then became successful with the Clone Wars, under the direct tutelage of George Lucas, which is really amazing.
He understood something.
Right.
This is actually, when I didn't get the job, I was very disappointed because I was up for the head writer of this new Clone Wars story show, right? And met Filoni and was very excited and met executives from Lucasfilm. I thought this was it. And the whole thing they told me is if you get the job, you're going to be flown over to Skywalker Ranch and work with George. for months, right? That's what I was told, right? I was like, oh my god, I gotta get this job. I didn't get the job, right?
Yeah.
And then I went to work on what has now become a cult classic. I didn't expect it at the time. A cult classic. It's Tron Uprising, which you can watch on Disney Plus right now. It's a cult classic. People watch.
I like Tron Uprising.
Yeah. So I went on to do that, and one of the people that was working on my at Disney at the time had come over from Lucasfilm, right, some months before. And when I told this person, like, oh, I told how my interview went with Filoni. This was just her opinion. Dave, if you're watching, and I'm just telling you what someone said, okay? I won't have the ego to claim this is true. This is what someone said. She said, oh, of course Dave wasn't going to hire you. What do you mean? I was like, it's like the moment because I started talking about all the sort of mythology of the sort of the Taoist origin of the Force and the Sufi elements of George Lucas's vision, and that's exactly when I felt something change in the room. Like I felt like the body language go from Dave being real open to like this when I started talking about that. I didn't know why, and I said that was weird. I felt like something. I intuitively knew I lost a job at that moment. I didn't know why. I just sensed it, right? And she said to me, oh, it's because of that moment when you started talking about the mythological, archetypal, religious elements of Star Wars. He doesn't know anything about that. She said he doesn't know anything about that, and she said, George, that's all George is about. And if he knew that if he put you in a room with George, all of George's attention would go to you.
Oh.
and remember, this is a guy that befriended George Lucas and made sure nobody else who could be his close friend could get into that inner circle. And now he's the head of Lucasfilm, right? That's a strategic, smart thinker. From his point of view, he did the right thing. Because I would sit there, I was like, hey, we should be using this, used all this Arabic in Star Wars. We should be using this Sufi thing. And George would be like, oh my God, somebody knows this. And then suddenly, Clone Wars becomes a little different, right?
Well, and also you talk about Sufi wisdom. That's also kind of a breath of fresh air as well. It's a new way to infuse Star Wars with a structure that's pre-existing that you could build off of, which is exactly what George did with Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's Japanese in there and American Westerns, so that would be a breath of fresh air, I would imagine.
My big mouth.
Real quick,
my big mouth. See, Mr. Filoni understands how to play the game. My big mouth, my need to show off my knowledge, make sure I didn't get the job.
So here it is. If Favreau was the solo president, it actually projects higher revenues. I mean, 10 to 13%. That's twice. Twice as much of an improvement. Wow, that's actually pretty. So that's impressive. That's interesting. And again, I would even say that in reality, the baseline is 62% for Kennedy. And I think that's high.
I think it's being generous.
I think it's generous. And I think that the AI has no opinion, like you, me, and Retro.
Yeah, so it doesn't gauge human emotion. It can't handle that.
So it just said, based off the profitability of Force Awakens, which was very profitable, the profitability of Rogue One, which was very profitable, the profitability of The Last Jedi, which was profitable, so on and so forth, is baked into that 62%. So I bet if I said from 2017 Kennedy on, that baseline would plummet. But to be fair, that's where it is. And so you see, even with a generous scoring for Kennedy, Favreau would be a clear improvement for Lucasfilm if he were given the reins.
And I think 62 is fair. And the reason why I say that, this is Star Wars. It should be at least 70. So this is
below expectation. Yes.
Yeah.
By
because
far.
we're talking about, you're going to have the special effects. You're going to hire the best actors. You're going to have all of the technical aspects in lock. But the problem has been steering the stories in the right direction. And so I don't know where they're steering these stories from, or why they haven't really figured out how to do it properly. It's just all over the place. We're having so many different stories, and none of them feel cohesive. I mean, there is no cohesion in any of the stories that have been told in the last, I would say, 15 years.
See, and so now you just hit the exact issue right now. There's no cohesion because there has been two people vying for control of Star Wars. There's the official person running it, Kathleen Kennedy, who lost power with mismanaging The Last Jedi and onwards. So Jon Favreau comes in, supposedly just to make a TV show, way below her on the totem pole.
That's right.
In theory, right? In theory,
Yes.
right?
Right.
But he's the guy that has this background that Iger's like, this dude knows how to make franchises. He knows how to launch things out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He knows it, right? So Iger knew that. He knew that even, Iger probably has real figures, right? That are better than this AI about that, right? So he knew this guy. So of course he was going to defer to this guy. And then this guy, then you have Kennedy going, well, I'm the president. You're going to have some TV dude, some director, telling my people what to do. And Iger's like, yeah, you go deal with it. So you have this war tussle. So you have the Mandalorian, and then suddenly huge success. Then Kennedy comes in. Let's get rid of Gina Carano. That's one of the core reasons and also part of his plan. Let's derail the plan for Rangers of the New Republic. Let's derail the plan for Book of Boba Fett because apparently she was heavily in the Book of Boba Fett. So now, derail her as an actress. So they have to rewrite the scripts days before shooting, and you get a mediocre at best show that seems cobbled together because it was totally cobbled together. And then you push something like the Acolyte forward to sabotage any effort that he has to move forward, right? And so you have this tug of war of somebody resentfully attempting to derail this effort to fix Star Wars, right? And she succeeded because she had the power to keep inserting herself into this process, right? But she blew her wad with the Acolyte. That was her last thing. And then she lost all energy to survive. It was a double whammy, the Acolyte and Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones, yep.
She lost all energy to survive the system. And we saw that visibly when Steven Spielberg essentially humiliated her in public at that special celebration
for Indiana Jones,
where
the premiere.
He honored George Lucas, he honored Harrison Ford, and then he honored the Maestro, right? And
even
didn't honor her. And you could see her rage on her face. She wouldn't clap for him. She wouldn't clap for John Williams. She was full of rage. You could see it.
Well, and I would say Frank Marshall, you could see it on his face.
He was horrified. He was horrified. His neck flipped, and then he's
like, "Let's get out of here."
Yeah,
yeah.
And she's standing there. He did this. She's standing there. I mean, I've never seen anything like it because that's the mask falling. It's that moment in a TV show of how, the king's mask falls open and the court gasps in horror.
But you know what? It wasn't just the snub for me. It was the way Spielberg went about it. Because he introduced everybody on stage and then he said, and the next person is the glue. So he was really setting up, which describes a producer, right? They hold it all together. So he was setting it up as though he was about, and you could see Kennedy look down and look up. She's ready to be introduced. And he's like, John Williams. And
yeah, and it was good storytelling, right? I mean, exactly. The idea was he was setting her up for humiliation intentionally because you saw the way he built it up. You see when he's saying, and the person who been on this since the very beginning,
double on it,
right? You would think it's Frank Marshall, who are the producers on the first movie, right? You would think that's what he means, right? That's what I think when I'm hearing it. And you see Frank Marshall turning to face. There's Disney executives sitting there. There's Hollywood people sitting. He turns to face the crowd, chest out, ready for his accolades. And then John Williams, and he deflates, and his neck flips, and she just is full of rage. It was unlike anything I've ever seen in public. But that was true. And then as she was out, but look at all the damage she did in this tug of egos.
Well, and it also what Spielberg said to follow up when he mentioned George Lucas, he emphasized that George was the creator. He's the creative visionary. So he was really stressing the level of creativity and the source of it all. So he really underscored that ancient divide between the administrative class, which, by the way, I don't knock the administrative class. You need them too, but they're not. It's a different mentality than the creative class, and they can't do it all themselves either. So, but in that case, Spielberg leaned decisively toward the creative class there, which clearly Kennedy's out. That was never her forte. So, well, I will say this. So this is interesting. I am very intrigued by this. I'm glad we took a couple extra steps here to analyze a little bit further. It really does show that the power of someone like Favreau, and like you said, Bob Iger, I may not be a big fan of his, but I do sense that he brought Favreau in initially as Kennedy's replacement way back in the day by 2019, 2020.
Well, more than that, I mean, I the reason I'm even on YouTube is that I had, posted in a comment somewhere on a YouTube channel. I think it might have been Geeks and Games or something, that I had some information that had a friend who is in the inner circle of Jon Favreau's crew, and who told me bluntly. I mean, it was literally, I remember because it was the last public tea I had with someone just before the pandemic, right? So we were at cafe, and 2 weeks later everything shuts down, right? So I remember it vividly, and he sat there and we're talking about how we just had Mandalorian came out, and he was telling me, he's talking about his friend John. He's like, oh yeah, no, again, this is what he claims. I don't know if it's historically true. It's what he said. Right. What he said, right, was, John called Bob and said, hey man, when he saw The Last Jedi, he said John hated it and said, what is this garbage, right? He was offended by it, and he said, he claims, so he called Bob, or they had a conversation, whoever called, and he's like, why don't you bring me in? I can fix this for you. I can put this on track. So this was John. I no doubt he inserted himself intentionally onto it. Otherwise he would have quit a long time ago, the moment this drama began, right? He came on because he wanted to do it.
Right. That has been my read ever since the beginning. And you could also almost see the battle between Kennedy and Favreau take place on the screen as all of this was playing out. I'll never forget, they had a documentary they put out on Disney Plus in the early launch, and it was called like Star Wars Gallery. And it was about the behind the scenes filming of The Mandalorian, which was Jon Favreau's his signature project. That's why Iger brought him in, was to do The Mandalorian. And so they had these round tables, and Filoni was on that round table. Dallas Bryce Howard was there. Carl Weathers was involved in this round table. And then in one of these segments, Kennedy was involved in this round table. And I'll never forget watching. I was like, they're fighting right now. Favreau was at the head of the table because it's his show, The Mandalorian. Yeah. Kennedy was sitting next to him, and he's like, let's go around the table and discuss this one issue. And he goes, let's start with you. And Kennedy's like, let me just butt in here. And basically, we're going to start with me. And she was like touching him, like his hand, like, I came up with the show. And she's like, I thought this was a good idea. And she was really inserting herself. And then Favreau was like, so back to you. Like I originally
like, oh.
Yeah. I was like, man, you could read totally. It was right there on screen, and then they
only do that if Bob Iger has already said you're the guy in charge. You only do that if you've been given that assurance.
Yeah, I do think Favreau should have quit. I actually think it was a big risk for him to stay as long as he did, because I don't think it's helped his career to at this point to be kind of closeted, so to say, or mothballed at Lucasfilm. Going forward, I think all of that can be undone, and especially if he can get some sort of serious creative control, I think he'd be a great fit for Star Wars. I think he loves it, and I think the fans love him, and I think he has that executive level experience. So, he's not just some guy in Hollywood. Favreau is a money maker. He's a money maker in Hollywood. So
guys,
I'll say this.
I'm just going to step right in. I have to get ready to go. I have to go over to Lorena Creole's channel. It was a pleasure to talk about this with you guys.
You go, Retro Nerd, before you go,
yes,
weren't we supposed to do a video today? I think on the
we changed it. Yeah, we changed it to tomorrow.
Did we? Okay, I forgot.
Yes.
My lack of organization. What time did we change it for? You can all find out. What time we change it for tomorrow?
Cameron, you just Kennedy'd.
I looked at I don't know what's on my schedule.
You're just winging it.
What time? I'll put it on my calendar. What time we're doing it tomorrow?
Yeah, the same time. I think it's 5 o'clock your time.
It's 5 p.m. All right, good. So good. We've been doing a series of Greta Garbo sound.
We all have to get together because I want us to talk about Casablanca one of these days.
Oh yeah,
yes,
that'd be wonderful.
Okay.
I'm all in on that.
We'll all talk. And guys, everyone in the chat, really great to see you guys. Lucas was here and everything. Send you my love. Take care, everybody.
And everybody, if you are enjoying this conversation, I always forget to do this. Please click like. I always forget to say that while I'm going. Click like, add a comment if you could. It really does help the video in the algorithm. Plus, I'm sure you have something to say. This is a big topic. People have a lot of thoughts on this. Don't be shy. Put it down below, and I will comment.
What I'm noticing, though, I've been looking at the comments, and as always, you have very gracious people on your channel. But it's interesting, and I don't want to track them here, but I've noticed there's been a dearth of the Star Wars is dead people. All roads lead to the sequel trilogy people. The people repeat these mantras, sort of angry mantras. I think they're kind of disappointed that this drama is over because they need it. And they're kind of like, they're all gone silent because they're sullen. What do you do in a world where
it became
not around? Yeah.
Honestly, Cameron, it became an extension of an identity. Because one of my, we all grow up, we have different dimensions to our identity. Being a Star Wars fan was a part of a dimension of my personality. It was there from a really early age, and it carried on. So I think once Star Wars took a clear wrong turn, we like right in front of us. It's like the race car turned and it was going the wrong way. And what frustrated me, and I'm sure this is true for the entire fandom who has been critical of Star Wars. There was a real frustration of seeing the car go off the road while people were telling you you're an idiot if you think that. So this sort of like, it's obvious that it's happening, but all the high ups are saying it's not happening. That became an explosive level of frustration, which really launched the YouTube fandom and the social media age. So I think it became where I love Star Wars became a personality dimension to I thoroughly oppose what they're doing at Lucasfilm became a personality dimension. And that either became a toxic personality dimension or something that was kept at that, what I think is the right level, which is call it out when it's bad, be honest when it's good, and don't make it define you. Don't let it consume your personality, your identity.
No, I mean, that's the healthy place. But we've been slowly weaning people off of this heroin fix they get in their ideological identification with Star Wars, which I guess, but maybe nothing is new. I mean, I think this kind of nuttiness has been going on since the prequels, right? Because we had this generation that just loved all of what we were born with, just loved the original Star Wars. and then the EU book started with the Thrawn novels and everything else. We fell in love with that, right?
Yes.
And then George comes around at the end of the 90s with his prequels, and then that divides the fandom, and and then the sort of mentally ill fandom began then, and then continued on for the next 30 years, right?
It's weird watching the prequels. Because I had multiple viewings of the prequels, even at the time, even though I was an outright critic of it. And back then we didn't have social media. So you were an outright critic in your friend circle,
sure.
To whoever was listening.
We grumbled to people over coffee.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, can you believe the dialogue in this? But I still went to every opening day, and I went to multiple viewings of all of those. I remember seeing Revenge of the Sith 6 times in the theaters. Like there was times where I was like, man, I just finished up at work. I'm like, I'm going to go see it again. I loved the opening. I loved it. So as much as I was critical of those films and like seriously critical, I still loved watching them. And that is not the same as how I feel about the sequel trilogy. I feel like those were not Star Wars. And I'm right. They're not Star Wars. So anyway, it is a different thing. I keep hearing this argument too, that the sequels will become a source of cult classic love in the future. I don't think so.
That's not possible, because cult classic stardom starts relatively quickly, right? For example, something like the 13th Warrior, which I love that film, right?
Antonio Banderas.
Yeah, maybe we should do a video on the 13th Warrior sometime.
Interesting.
Because I'd love to do it. So Warren Lewis, who wrote the screenplay, is a friend of mine, right? And he's just, and he can experience. I mean, he got panned when it came out, but very quickly, sort of a buzz started beginning that I kind of like that movie, man. I want to get
Omar Sharif in it.
I guess DVDs are out by then. I want a DVD. And then word of mouth continued to spread. I kind of like this movie, man, to the point that people became obsessed with it, right? And it is an incredible movie. And I think like shows like Vikings are the product of that movie, right? And it is a movie that has withstood the test of time, even though it was not successful. I mean, the most extreme example is It's a Wonderful Life, which failed at the box office at Christmas when it came out, right? 1946. It failed. And it was rediscovered in the 70s when it was broadcast on television, right? And now it's become one of the most beloved movies of all time. But it took 30 years for that to start, right? But again, what happened is that when it was re-released was when the buzz started. People say, could you put them back on next year? and the networks responded, right? And that's how the cult classic began. The sequels will never be cult classics because they never had the support. They would be cult classics today, this many years afterwards.
There would be some, dude, when the 10-year came around for Force Awakens, the only people that actually really cared about it were the YouTubers who spent a little bit of time going over it again. There was
and a lot of the YouTubers were saying there's going to be a re-release. No re-release game.
Re-release game. So Cameron, I have to ask, we've talked about this at length over the last several years now. And back then when this topic first came up, it was definitely kind of it was laughed at, and maybe rightfully so. Who knows? But I've always
I'm always laughed at, wrongfully so, because I'm always ahead of the curve. So I'm kind of used to that. Yeah.
Well, my question is, here in 2026, post Kennedy, we could say that, as a certainty now. What are the chances of decanonization of those films, or just alternate reality? Whatever it is to get around them. What are the chances of that now? Do you think?
Well, the chances are, fully in the hands of Jon Favreau, right? And but I think just on a practical level, I think the strategy will be the strategy that we saw just a few days ago with the announcement that the Galaxy's Edge is being retooled to go back to the original Star Wars, right?
Huge.
To the point that it was the LA Times did a lengthy analysis of it, right? And it's funny because I posted on my Patreon and compared it to an article I wrote in 17 months ago, almost a year and a half ago, that my source Sparrow inside of Disney/Lucasfilm told me exactly what they were planning to do, and everything I predicted was in the LA Times artitle, right? A year and a half later, right? And it even used some of the same language, right? Of turning back the clock. It's very funny. So, but that's I think what the current immediate thing is. Because again, they're just trying to move forward from drama. They've had enough drama for over a decade, right? And so announcing tomorrow the sequels are retconned. It creates drama. It creates online drama. More YouTubers start talking about it. Tweets start going back and forth. Some idiot accuses them of sexism. You couldn't even wait for Kathleen Kennedy to be out the door, and you did. I mean, so why create drama? What's the value? So what they do is they're doing what they did on Galaxy's Edge, which is let's just give people what they want and lessen the visibility of the stuff they don't want. So Rey is not out of the park. She's been put in some random jungle setting that no one's going to go to. No one even knows where it is in the game, in the amusement park. But she's there physically. If you want to look for Rey, you'll find Rey. But you got to be looking for her, right?
Right.
Whereas Vader is going to be there up front because that's what you're there to see. So that's what we're going to see is we're going to see the establishment, and that's what my source inside of Disney said that we're going to see the establishment of the Thrawn vision, the upcoming Thrawn movies that are coming, right? And that will be the establishment of the new mythology going forward, right? To the point that little by little, people will notice, well, didn't that kind of contradict something that happened in the prequels or the sequels in that? Would that really, the sequels still happen if that happened? And eventually you just stop talking about the sequels because you're just moving forward into a new timeline where everything just follows a new story and it just fades away. So you maybe never even have to make an announcement.
Yeah, I remember predicting, because remember there was passionate arguments back in the day in favor of all those sequel trilogies. And I remember I was like, look, you're not hearing me. I'm like, but I'll tell you one thing, time is on my side. I go, time will prove me right. I'm like, I could tell you that the fundamentals of what makes a good story are not in place. And so there's nothing there to grab a hold of. There's nothing for it to endure. There's nothing there that lends itself to an enduring legacy in these shows. And it got worse. I remember getting those arguments before Rise of Skywalker came out, which, it's funny in retrospect, that movie's even worse because it's just, it's just trying to fix things, and it's a disaster. But either way, those movies aren't going to go anywhere. I would love to see. I always thought one cool thing would be just as far as instant way to kind of grab some attention. I thought it'd be cool if they did all the films, all six. When I say all the films, I mean 6, 1 through 6. In the Clone Wars animated style. I would love to see that. It would just be fun to see it. I would watch it. And 2, I think another trilogy, if you're going to do Star Wars, that would be fun. Set it, 1,000 years in the past when the Force first is found and, how the factions form. Go way back and launch another story there. Tell a great story and then try to build off that. That way you can do something that's really unique and has to stand on its own. You have to make it stand on its own. You can't get the member berries.
Yeah, no, and you know, and so it's good. So we're entering this new era, and I think that the narrative is going to start changing, right? And the only way the narrative will really start changing is when we visually see Mando and Grogu. And already every single shot I've seen of it looks wildly entertaining. It just looks entertaining. It looks like Star Wars. It looks fun. It looks like something you want to bring your kids or your nephews and nieces to, right? And you're going to have a good time, right? You know, it's just, it doesn't have any weird dour vibe. Even in the, I remember now realizing something was wrong. I should have realized something was wrong with The Last Jedi on the marketing campaign. I should have sensed it because they were pretty open in their ads about saying, you know, that they had that moment where
the
Luke
Jedi must die.
you know, the Jedi must die, and you're like, okay, well, that's going to be the surprise twist. No, that's the point of the movie, right? That wasn't like he's going to twist away from that. That is the point of the movie, right? But they were giving us a warning. They were giving us a warning. In fact, I think even there were moments where I think somebody did a compilation on YouTube of all the interviews that he did Mark Hamill did just in advance of the movie being released, where he was kind of warning it's not going to be what you think it is. And, you know, you might want to be a little cautious. What you expect,
Hamill.
Right? Hamill did all those warnings because he knew it was garbage. He knew it was garbage, right? He knew it, right? And, you know, one of my most painful things, it's not even hilarious, it's very painful, is like on the night of the premiere, that interview that was done, that was memed, like when, you know, some Hollywood reporter interviewer is talking to Ryan Johnson, who's blabbing away at the premiere how wonderful it is. And this was the first time that Hamill had seen the whole movie in the final cut form.
Yes.
And he's standing right next to him, and just the look of shock, of horror, and of anger on his face, like it contorted to those three emotions. I mean, they were memes because he had never seen the whole movie. He had read this. He knew the script was garbage. And he saw how Johnson treated everyone on set, and including Carrie Fisher. He saw that, right? We saw all that in the behind the scenes documentary, that he was a jerk on set, right? So he knew this was going to be a disaster. He didn't know how bad of a disaster it was going to be until he saw the cut. And he realized that his legacy had been severely damaged as an artist.
Yeah, and it's so funny listening to Ryan Johnson all these years. He really has been holding the line. You know, he's like, yeah, I have no regrets. Like he holds on to that. And I'm like, Ryan, you know, it would actually serve you to allow some humility in and be like, you know, I overestimated what I thought would happen. And, you know, I can understand that. Just own it. Be like, yeah, maybe I fell short. You know, I think, you know, that would actually earn some endearment from the fans. Like, well, you know, at least you admitted it, you know, but this, I didn't make any mistakes. I regret nothing. I think that's the wrong way to go. You have to be able to know when you've taken a wrong turn, you know, so whatever, you know, Kamran, one of the questions I was going to ask you was in the Kennedy era. So we mostly did not like the Kennedy era. That said, there was some good Star Wars in there. There was some good things going on. I was going to ask you if you had to rank your top 3 Star Wars projects, and here real quick, I'll add something here to help give you a reference point. And by the way, it's worth looking at this anyway. This is a list of all their projects, but it also shows their losses. Yeah, it shows that they lost $7.4 billion if you calculate.
Based on what's the revenue stream calculation based on?
So this is based on. So this is the budget spent, the either reported official budget spent versus the official profits calculated for, you know, theater. You have to take about
that's the only question I have before I make any comment on this. I understand the methodology. How are we calculating profits, right? Because that's one of the great mysteries of Hollywood. But we understand that, you know, that theaters only give out 50. You know, studios only keep 50% of theater gross.
Right. So I did it in a pretty straightforward way. No. Like I did not take into account marketing costs, which would actually drive this even further. Yeah. So I just did the most basic calculation to get some basic metric. I did the reported budget, the most established budget out there, not including marketing. And then I took half of the profits from the box office, and I didn't even calculate China, which would cut into that even more. So in a straight half of the house from the budget, where are we? And it comes up to a 7. Okay, so and the other thing is a lot of these shows were made for streaming for Disney Plus, which had no box office. So that just comes straight out of the coffers. And this shows that if you just take everything that they spent, Rebels, so since 2012, them taking over, Rebel season 1, Rebel season 2, which, modest budgets, all the way down to all the big profits they pulled in, we have a straight up $7.45 billion deficit just in the straight up analysis. So that's a lot. So, but this list also shows you all their projects right up to about right now. So taking a quick look at this, what would you say are the top three, your three most favorite from the Disney era? And then also tell me your three most despised.
Well, I mean, the favorites would have to be, let's see. I don't know if I can get to three. I would say Rogue One is definitely the best thing that came out of, the only thing that felt to me was pure, maybe accidentally Lucas, Star Wars filmmaking, right? Rogue One, none of those movies is worthy of it. The Mandalorian overall was a good show. Again, derailed because of Cara Dune's departure, which caused them to screw up all their screenwriting for that, right? I never went to the Galactic Star Cruiser. So I can only give you two, right? I mean, of those that are up there, the things that I enjoyed of the TV shows, I enjoyed The Mandalorian. I enjoyed Obi-Wan. I very much enjoyed the kids thing that we're talking about, Skeleton Crew, right? Very much enjoyed that. And I had mixed feelings about the Book of Boba Fett. I thought it was a mediocre show overall, and I thought that with some saving graces, and I thought the finale was actually pretty good, and I enjoyed it, right? But that doesn't make up for a mediocre show. Again, that was the result of a clearly derailed story. So yeah, that's what
maybe it saves it from a little bit.
Yeah, and of the worst, The Last Jedi is the worst movie ever made in history. It's the worst movie ever made, because other movies are bad movies, and that are historically mocked. What was that one? The desert one that was the biggest disaster.
Ishtar,
right? So, but again, movies like that, or some of these Ed Wood movies, right, that were just disasters, they weren't made with ill intent. They just weren't successful.
That's right.
They might have been incompetently made, but certainly Ed Wood loved his work, even though nobody else appreciated it, right? So,
right.
He was like an Andy Kaufman type of filmmaker that people didn't get, right? I'm personally not a fan of Andy Kaufman. I don't get his humor. I don't think it's funny, right? I think people just say that because it's cool to say that. I think Ed Wood but I think, Ed Wood really loved his filmmaking. He just wasn't good at it, right? And things like Ishtar are just, cluster Fs that happen because of the system. But there was no ill intention to screw it up. The Last Jedi is the worst movie ever made because it is ill-intentioned. It is disrespectful of the franchise it's coming from. It hates the characters. It hates the mythology. It is from someone with a grudge, someone with an ideological grudge. Maybe he thought it was Star Wars is white empowerment or whatever other story that he told himself it was, right? But it came from a personal grudge. That's very clear. It did not come from any incompetence. He's not an incompetent filmmaker. He's a brilliant filmmaker. And it came from ill will, which makes it even more dangerous and disgusting, right? That's why The Last Jedi is the worst movie ever made. It's the only movie made with hatred of its underlying material.
Well, I just want to add to that real quick, because I've thought about this, and because I've gone back and I've seen movies that I did not like in the past that I've suddenly been like, you know what? I'm a little too hard on this movie. And I think it's because of the distinction you just made, that some of the movies that I was tough on in the past were movies that were made in earnest that fell short.
Yeah.
Versus movies that had an antagonistic core that were almost antithetical to the film that they were portraying. And that's different. That set a new bar. There's a new curve to grade a movie on. So I went back and I saw Star Trek V, hated it. And I was like, there's Kirk, there's Spock, there's Bones, and there's some good dialogue in that scene. And oh my God, that's actually a good scene right there. Why was I so that's a crappy shot there. The Enterprise isn't convinced. I saw all the bad stuff. All the egg is on its face still. But I was like, this movie was a little bit better than I remember. And I found I did that with the prequels. And because I realized that there was still something there that the filmmaker really did care about, and the vision came up short. But when I watch The Last Jedi, like you said, for example, I'm like, they're just attacking something about reality. This isn't a
it's an ideological statement. It is an ideological statement that comes from a very ugly place that I don't think most human beings share the philosophy that he expressed in that movie.
Correct. And it won't, I feel like archetypally speaking, He went anti-foundational, anti-archetypal, and as a result, although you may have covered it up with some really sexy CGI and visual effects, and John Williams' score is there. You can cover up a lot with good visual effects and a John Williams score. But underneath the hood, it was antithetical, I think, to storytelling. And I think that's why I can confidently predict there will be no cult classic. And I think that these films will just fade away and become meaningless. They had no substance, and they'll be meaningless. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that there is a new scale to look at it on. A bad film in the 80s is now maybe not so bad, not quite as bad as we thought.
Yeah, I mean, I liked episode 2 and 3 very much. I didn't like episode 1 at the time, even though I did go to see it multiple times in theater. I did not do, I only saw Force Awakens once. I forced myself to go see Last Jedi a second time because I must have misunderstood the movie. I must have gotten it wrong. I have to see this to see that this what really happened. And then I saw it again, and my hatred was solidified, right? And then I didn't bother to see Solo. I didn't bother to see The Rise of Skywalker. I don't know I literally know nothing about those movies, right? I couldn't care less, right? And so it's now I look back at episode 1, which I was disappointed with at the time. I can watch that on loop 24 hours a day instead of ever watching The Last Jedi ever again, because it's a movie that has some really great moments. I mean, to this day, the Duel of the Fates is one of the best lightsaber battles ever. Right?
Ever.
Ever.
My kids. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
I'll
interrupt.
just say that, there were much more extensive lightsaber battles with hundreds of Jedi and all this other stuff, and intense stuff with Anakin and all that stuff. Anakin versus Obi-Wan. It still doesn't live up to the simplicity, the dance. It was like a dance. It was like a choreographed ballet, which was what that was, right? And that's so beautiful. And I thought that at the time. When I saw the episode, I was like, well, this was the only part of the movie I liked was this mesmerizing Jedi versus Sith fight. But now I see George's love for this universe in there. I now see it, even for Jar Jar Binks. I understand why they're there now, having seen how bad it can get, right? And I have nothing but respect for episode 1 now.
Even my kids, they're Gen Alpha. My son is 13. My youngest son is 10. And they watch a lot of YouTube. And there's a lot of those YouTube shorts. And it's just a different form of entertainment that I can get into, but it's not my go-to, right? But even they were watching. I was in here working, and I looked up, and I could see what they're watching on TV. And I saw Darth Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fighting in The Phantom Menace. So I sat there and I watched through the window. I have an office where I was watching, and even for them, they're like, we went from this, and it shows that epic battle with Kenobi coming in and them blocking behind his back and Maul taking him out with the double lightsaber. And it says, we went from that, and it shows, good maybe 10 seconds of the battle, and it's epic, to this. And it shows Rey fighting Ben Solo in Rise of Skywalker, doing these stupid moves with senseless moves with the lightsaber. And it was hysterical. So even my kids came and got me to make me watch it, even though I just saw it. So even in Gen Alpha language, it translates that this is a massive regression. In a YouTube short, it translates as an obvious regression. So, but and by the way, the prequels. One of the things about the prequels that has one of the reasons why it undergirds the trilogy and has stood the test of time is you are watching a story about the galaxy's greatest hero and the galaxy's greatest government. The most noble government, the most righteous government to date, collapse on the same day by becoming the opposite of themselves. There's almost no bigger story. That's such an ambitious storyline. Anakin, our greatest hero, turns to the dark side at the same time that the Galactic Republic becomes the Empire. I mean, that's an incredible storyline. Sign me up. I'll watch it again, and I will weather the storm of imperfect dialogue because there's a massive story there. Anyway, I love it. I still love Revenge of the Sith. I never really turned on that one.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's good. So look, I mean, just looking forward, and I probably need to head out relatively soon as well. But looking forward, I think that we are in a place where people, and I know people don't want to hope because they've been hurt so much, but I've been inside the kitchen, and I know there's a new chef there, and I've tasted the food, and I've seen for the last 2 years that there's been this guy coming in or this woman coming in and messing up the chef's food. adding extra hot sauce when it's not needed and stuff like that, or throwing in, spices that are not part of the recipe to screw it up. And so you get disappointed, right? That person is no longer employed by the restaurant, right? And so now you've got to let the chef do their thing. And already we are seeing it. We are seeing it before the announcement of her departure with the return of Darth Vader and OG Star Wars to Galaxy's Edge, right?
Huge signal.
And the LA Times positioned it as turning back the clock, which is the phrase I used in my Patreon article a year and a half ago. The plan was to turn back the clock, literally, and that's the LA Times how it positioned it. Turning back the clock means erasing Kathleen Kennedy's legacy, which is the entire point of that LA Times article. Is why are we doing this? Why are we going back 40 years? Right? It's because the later stuff doesn't hold up. Right?
Yeah.
And so we are on the right path when that is what the LA Times is saying.
So I'll just say this, Mike. I have two predictions here, and I'm curious about yours too.
Yeah.
I think that Mando and Grogu will be commercially successful. Mm-hmm. I think it will. This is just a prediction that it will be well received. I don't think it's going to blow anybody away. I think it's going to be somewhat safe and fun and spoken of positively. And I think the biggest complaint from the people that prefer the complaint side of things is going to be that it was more vanilla. I think that's going to be the largest complaint. I honestly have a funny feeling that Starfighter might be the thing that ignites a little bit of a fire. It's new. It's got a good actor that is pretty universally beloved. A lot of people like, guys and girls like Ryan Gosling. I think Starfighter, because it's also suggestive of speed, which is one of the secret ingredients to Star Wars is speed. So I have a funny
you hit a pivotal thing. I saw Lucas say that in an interview in the 80s. I saw that in the 80s, right after he did an interview right after Return of the Jedi, where he talked about how speed was so central, the whole light speed effect of the Millennium Falcon shooting forward and how he shot that, because he was central to the identity of Star Wars. Because he's a speed racer. He's a racer. He's a car racer.
Totally. And, the more now that I've gotten older and I think that about speed, you can see it in all of his films, this love of speed. And he puts you, the audience, in this impossibly I remember the audience reacting in 1983 when I was a child to the speeder bikes on Endor. People were freaking out in the theater about that.
As a child, that's the first one of the Star Wars movies I saw in the theater, because just as a kid, I only saw them on VHS before. And then Return of the Jedi is the first one I saw in the theater. And I can tell you, I can remember my heart pounding in my chest and like getting vertigo as a child, as a 12-year-old child, watching the speeders go through Endor forest. I mean, it was mesmerizing, and I felt like I was on a roller coaster ride while I sat in the theater.
Totally. And to this day, one of the most thrilling segments ever captured on film for me is the final assault on the second Death Star in Return of the Jedi, when they fly into the superstructure. The film work, the John Williams score, the editing with the actors' faces and the reactions and the maneuvering, and the fact that they filmed that in 1983 is actually still stunning to me, and it still holds up to this day. But that's speed. That's what he's doing. He's scaring you with speed. And even that famous line in A New Hope when he's like, if we're going to go in, we're going to go in full throttle. He's like, the score kicks up and we're going in fast. So Starfighter to me lends itself to that part of Star Wars that I think will play well. So you might see it like a Rogue One style success with Starfighter, where people just keep going back to see it because it's good, it's fun, and we want to be in the theater to watch it. So I think Mando and Grogu will do well. I think it will succeed, and I think that Starfighter might be a little bit of a dark horse breakout hit for them that makes them a lot of money. What do you think? What's your prediction?
I think you're right. I think that's. I do think you've hit it exactly on the nose. I think that Mando and Grogu is going to be a solid Jon Favreau movie because he knows how to make entertaining movies. I think we'll walk in there, we'll cheer like we cheered in the first Iron Man, and we're going to have fun and we're going to enjoy ourselves, right? And we're probably going to go see it a couple of times at least, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I do think by bringing in this new blood, with Starfighter and, with this new director into the world, we'll shake things up, because we haven't had that. It's just been Favreau and his people, trying to get stuff done with Filoni, right? We haven't had a movie since the Last Jedi, or I guess like since
Rise of Skywalker,
right? Since Rise of Skywalker, we haven't had a movie since then, right? and so Favreau is going to do what Favreau does, which is we know what that is, and that's always consistently good, right? But now we have someone who is an interesting and different filmmaker, with an actor who is a very good actor, who has always take risks. His movie, The First Man,
great movie.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling. I think we talked about Ryan Gosling plays Neil Armstrong. It's one of my top movies of all time. I've seen it 5 or 6 times in the theater, including IMAX. For me, that's that movie is so profound, and that is because Gosling sells the character so deeply, right?
Have you seen The Fall Guy?
I love The Fall Guy. It was so much fun.
It was great. Yeah,
Fall Guy is one of these things where you don't know why it didn't succeed, because people didn't realize it was a really good movie. This is in many ways it reminded me of like a movie that should have succeeded but nobody watched it. Was the original what was that Tom Cruise time thing movie, that was what the hell was it called?
Minority Report.
No, Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Right. And it was a really entertaining movie, but nobody saw it, right? Because it was a dumb title. The original title,
both had Emily Blunt,
was like, die, live, repeat, or something like that. It was a fun title, right? Live, die, repeat, something like that, right? But I think they've re-released the movie on DVD with the original Japanese title now, instead of, and because nobody knows what Edge of Tomorrow is. But those are Fall Guy was laugh out loud funny. I was crying in the theater. It was so much fun. Gosling, I don't know that many failed Gosling movies. He's just a really good.
Barbie, he was great in Barbie.
He just selects movies. He knows filmmakers. He knows scripts. He's just consistently, even when he does indie stuff like Drive, it's good, right? He just seems to have an instinct for of good filmmaking to be part of it, right? And
he appeals to men and women.
Exactly. So I think you're right. I think this is going to be the shockwave, because it's a new filmmaker bringing new blood into the system, and with a star that understands how to make the public happy, right? And they're synergized. And so I think that will be the thing that people go, oh my God, I'm liking Star Wars. I'm so happy we're trying some stuff. That's what I think. And I know, as far as I'm aware, Rey is not in the movie. My contacts are like, my contacts do is like, people can say that, like, we haven't seen a single thing of her being on set, or like, because in the office they get days of shooting, all that information gets passed around the office, right? Just as paperwork. Like, we haven't seen her name on anything. So what are you talking about? She's in this.
It's the kind of rumor that allows people who want to be critical of something that isn't even happened.
And there's no reason to.
She won't be in it.
There's no reason to. I mean, it's just, again, the only people that want it are sort of fans that need to be angry and YouTubers that need the clicks. But nobody wants it. And God bless her. Daisy Ridley's a wonderful actress, and I wish her continued success far away from this franchise. This franchise didn't do anything for her. It held her back. Right?
It ruined her career, or I should say ruined, but
it gave her a career and then took it away, right? And then and so I wish her success, and it's in her interest to get away from this thing.
Right. Well, Kamran, I'll tell you what, I really appreciate you coming on the stream here to discuss this. It's a long time coming. Kathleen Kennedy has had a big, long run. I do think her tenure will be studied, and I think it will be discussed at length. And at some point, we're going to have to see someone's going to have to try to do a 5-part or 8-part documentary on Netflix that details this, because it's such an epic failure, in my opinion. Ultimately, this is a failed tenure. But I just want to say thank you for coming on here to discuss this with us. It's a new day at Lucasfilm. It's a chance to reset, and there is some room for optimism, I think, even amongst the most pessimistic out there. Absolutely. So any last words, Kamran?
No, I just said, people, if you want to come join me on Patreon, I'll throw a link in there before I leave. That's a great place. We have a lot of conversations about what's been happening, and we've been I've been, like I said, I have a post 18 months ago describing what was going to happen at Galaxy's Edge, and now 18 months later, every single thing that I said was going to happen at Galaxy's Edge is happening at Galaxy's Edge. So I think this Patreon has proven to have some value. Well, I hope some people will come on to it.
Well, I'll just I'll piggyback that real quick. I'm not even trying to sell the Patreon here. This is just an honest testimony. Throughout the whole time since 2017, when Last Jedi came out and the fandom kind of formed on YouTube, I heard so many different opinions and so many different insider leaks that at some point it came to a head where all the stuff coming out, all the narratives out there could not be correct. Somebody was wrong at some point, and I stuck with Kamran. For very specific reasons, which I won't get into now. I decided Kamran was correct. That it passed the test on certain aspects that I look for when I'm trying to weigh out what's going on. And I decided Kamran was the one who had this understood the most. And I have stuck with Kamran throughout all of this. And I believe that, ultimately I have a complete understanding of what happened from beginning to end. It all works. It's a coherent story and it explains everything. So if you'd like some insider talk, I do think Kamran's Patreon is a great place for that. And by the way, a lot of Kamran's Patreon members, some of whom are in the chat, are great. They have great insights on their own, and they actually
their comments they bring so much information I don't have because I'm not on Twitter. They're all searching Twitter and finding interesting things that are like, okay, this is something happening I didn't even know about. Yeah.
So anyway, there's that. Please click like and subscribe if you are interested in more conversations like this. Leave a comment if you have something to say, and I will respond to it. And other than that, may the Force be with us, and let's look forward to some better times ahead with Lucasfilm and Star Wars.
God willing. Thank you everyone for having me on. And Douglas, we should be doing more stuff in the future. Maybe we'll do something with Veteran Road Girl on Casablanca. And
13th Warrior, I wrote that down.
13th Warrior. You and I just need to do 13th Warrior because I can't promise it, but I can reach out to see if I can get Warren Lewis, a screenwriter, to join us.
That would be fantastic.
I can text him and see if he's available. But if we can find a date, maybe Warren Lewis will be able to join us. And he loves talking about the movie.
That sounds awesome.
He's so heartened that people love it still, right? So
but let's do that. Let's do that one way or the other.
Okay. All right, guys. Everyone, God bless everyone, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Peace.
Good night, everybody.